Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fialka. Today is April 30, 2025. Want to thank Rob Grant and this amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Also want to thank Heather Woodbury and Maire Smiley for introducing me to today's guest, Maire Clerkin. Is that the way right to pronounce them both?
That's exactly right, Jerry. Yes, hello.
Such an honor and a pleasure. First question is, where are you calling from?
I am calling from deepest Silver Lake, Los Angeles, California, in the United States of America, I think I am.
That is cool. First question really is, what's the best thing for a human being?
Ooh, what's the best thing for a human being? Well, for this human being, it varies. Sometimes it's ice cream.
I love it. What flavor?
Chocolate chip, mint chocolate chip.
Oh, how cool.
Or lemon. But when it's not ice cream, it's probably the best thing would probably be friends, connections, fresh air, coffee.
I love all these. They're really good. And you really get it because we're here to have fun. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Mm. Well, my favorite form might not be the form I use most. The form I use most, I'm afraid, is I'm one of those people addicted to their smartphones. And so I wake up and go on The Guardian online and Twitter and God knows what else. My favorite, what was the exact question to get?
What's your favorite form of information? How it comes?
Well, I suppose my favorite form of information is in person.
Yeah.
People telling me things, exchange
Yeah.
of views, exchange of information.
Yeah.
But I suppose there are so many sources. It shows how times have changed. The biggest luxury for me when I lived in London was to open up the Sunday newspapers and have hours of drinking coffee and eating pastries and sitting in a pub with friends and reading the Sunday newspapers.
Yeah. No, that we call that direct experience. That's beautiful in person, but you really cover the waterfront there. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Probably survival. For me personally, sometimes it's to avoid immediate tasks or boring work or things that displacement activity. Let me go and read the news. But I think that I suppose that people we need information. The trouble is, information is myriad. It's a lot of it, to coin a famous person's phrase, is fake. um,
Well,
yeah.
the great word about fake is Eric McLuhan taught me this, that the Latin root word for fake is the same, and fact, FACT, are the same to make. So fake or fact, the Latin root is to make. So to make something, whether it's true or not, you're making something. But I love, you taught me this great line, displacement activity. That's what life's about, right? Why do we have to do all this stupid crap? Why don't we just chill out and have displacement activity? That's
well,
what.
Well, I must say I love this fact and fake, and that they're two sides of the same coin. I was going to say priceless. I was going to do a little kind of that's priceless. Yeah. That's another word it's priceless. It's like it's priceless.
That's amazing. So is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
Innate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do thoughts create emotions?
Absolutely. Yes, they needn't be specific thoughts that are filled with words. I think thoughts come in all shapes and sizes, including perhaps the way animals speak, or we speak before we learn. We think rather that as animals think, and maybe as we think before we learn to speak, that we're still, babies that are thinking. So yes, absolutely. Emotion. Sometimes emotion is just it's a visceral reaction, but I think very often, yeah, it's thought generated.
Beautiful. Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think
Until I um, until I well, if I act on it and it's a decision and it's the wrong one, that's when I'll know what I think. But it could be that I think more often with me, it's superficial here. I know when I speak it and can feel that it doesn't sit right, or that I immediately can contradict myself, or I say it to somebody who doesn't like it and or doesn't agree with it. So yeah,
No,
I don't
that's
really
widespread. That's widespread because McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
I write it. Yes, yeah,
But you
yeah.
covered a lot there. Speak, feel, contradict. Mine is I don't know what I think until I ask somebody else what I'm supposed to think. That's why I ask all these stupid questions. But can humans think without language?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sure of that.
Yeah. What Chomsky says, language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Dance.
That
And
is beautiful. I was
uh,
hoping you would say that so I could slip this in. If you can't, if you can't say it, sing it. If you can't sing it, dance it.
oh yeah, who said that? I like that.
I don't know. I've said that for years, and it's one of my favorite because it's like you just. But that's beautiful. We're going to get into dance, and so your observation.
Wasn't it Samuel Beckett who said, "Dance now, think later," something like that? I probably.
I will look that one up. If it is dance now, think later. I like that. Well, I know the other great one is Emma Goldman said, "I won't be in your revolution if I can't dance."
Quite right too.
Um, your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
More feeling beings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. I'm like, good luck. How do you turn your brain off? And there's a bumper sticker on a car in my street and it says, don't believe everything you think. And I'm like, well, you could say, don't believe everything you feel.
I think it's a good thing not to trust your feelings. Well, maybe trust. So there's all the thing about the gut instinct, but I think sometimes we're conditioned to think certain ways, and I think that I think it maybe is a good thing to switch it up, not stick with the dogma of I must trust my feelings, I must trust my beliefs, my conditioning. I think it's probably a better option to not rely on just one way of doing things and thinking things,
Yeah.
which
Beautiful.
makes it sound very vague and not wanting to put my foot on a or sit on one side of the fence or the other. But yeah,
No,
thinking and feeling are so intertwined
yeah.
that we can't always differentiate, and thinking is not necessarily conscious thought. I think it is an amalgam of sensations and whatever neurons are sparking in our heads.
Yeah. We invented the words thinking and feeling, but in essence, they're so connected, you can't separate them and you want to integrate them. But because we invented the words, we think we can separate it. But I love your word vague. One of my filmmakers in my festival like 30 years ago, I says, oh, he called me from the college. Are you studying to be a filmmaker? And he goes, vaguely. I goes, vaguely? That's the kind of filmmakers we're looking for. I love that. That's back to vaguely is like that other displacement activity. What's so bad with vague displacement activity? Okay, so Maura, this is really fun. You get it. So these are two questions from Alan Turing in the 50s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
Um, I'm sure it's related to the soul. I don't know if it's a function of it. It might be a luxury of it.
That's good. You really get it because what I'm after is me and you versus the wording on the questions. So if you change a word, if you say, I don't know, I can't answer that, that's totally okay. I welcome anecdotes, stories, tangents, all good. You don't have to answer the question, but when you reword one of like it could be a luxury, not a function. That's what I'm after. Like, well, a luxury, that's beautiful. The second Turing question is, can machines think?
I flipping well hope not. But, but I think that we're being shown that they're getting there with AI and robots. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. It's also up for debate. I know I have
Yeah.
friends who are telling me how AI is great because you can do this and you can do that with it. Well, if it's medical research and cures for this and that, right? Okay, but if it's getting in the way of me making up a dance or a story, I don't want those bastards near me. No.
Yeah. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I don't actively pursue either one. I don't think. Do I? Do I actively pursue happiness? Maybe I. Hmm. Well, I don't know. Even answering this question, I'm trying to give it meaning. Probably won't make either of us happy. All right. So I'll be honest. I suppose I pursue happiness. If I pursue, I don't know. I don't know. Pass on that
That's
one.
no, that's all right because I got it from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He says happiness doesn't tend to last, meaning tends to last.
Oh,
What
I
do you
like
think?
that. Yes,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, that's probably true. I think that happiness really it comes at you unawares. So all the things that we think are going to bring us happiness, you know, riches or holidays or whatever. I have found. I remember actually Maura Smiley, who we probably met through. Uh, I had a conversation with her years ago about being stressed or unhappy, and I said, at the moment, the only time that I'm not stressed is when I'm in the middle of teaching a bunch of third graders, and I'm so connected and involved in it that it's the only time that I'm not worried, sad, stressed, upset, uptight. I'm actually in that. We're communicating, there's creativity going on. Um, and all of the stresses are nowhere near, and they can't be anywhere near because there's too much dynamic activity and connection with the kids. And so, and that's work. And if somebody had said to me today, do you know what? You don't need to go into work. You can have the day off. You can go and sit in Griffith Park or go and meet your friend in the wine bar. All of that sounds much nicer. But in fact, it's very often when we're working, if it's something that we know has meaning or that is meaningful, then that can actually give us what we need. It's a form of happiness could be defined as when you're not stressed and worried and irritable.
Yeah. It's beautiful because when talk to students, I say, get your job and your life as mixed up as possible so that there's no separation. Like you're having this ecstatic experience teaching these kids, and you're in peace of mind and all that great mood. And it was like, they're paying me to do this. How cool is that? Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Mm. Say that again, Jerry.
Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it?
Well, my brain has just turned inside out, saying, "Yeah, it does not compute."
That's totally okay.
So
What's
what
fast?
does that mean? What answer does that then give us? If my brain cannot,
Well, no, I mean, it's probably see some of these questions at the beginning, is it more this or more that? This one woman says, the word more doesn't function in your question. It sounds like I'm trying to get you to commit, but it's like it tells us a lot. We don't know what consciousness is. I mean, I interviewed a neuroscientist yesterday, and he says there's no reality. So we don't know what consciousness is. We've made up a word and we've kind of all decided it kind of means this, but we don't know if do we make consciousness or is it there and we're tapping into it. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's just, you know,
hmm,
it's just, you know, a prompt. That's what most of these are, just prompts like this one. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
well, in my case, obviously, the speed of thought is decelerating as we speak.
Dude, you give it 100%. We're here to have fun. You don't judge yourself. You're doing super great. We're just here to have fun. It does. Okay, so here's the poet Audre Lorde. You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Her colleague, who's a dancer, Yvonne Rainer, said, "Oh, you can if you expose the tools." What new tool do you suggest?
Um, mm, um, Sorry, repeat that, please.
Yeah, first of all, it's not really what I'm asking is what tool do you most gravitate towards? And it doesn't have to be a tangible tool. But if you want to apply it to I throw these cute quotes in before the questions sometimes. It's basically you put in the context you want. You know, it's like what tool works best for you? And you could add the word new if you want.
Yeah, I was really intrigued in the original
The
form of
original quote is Audre Lorde saying, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools."
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, tools usually mean creativity to me, not
Yeah,
dismantling.
yeah.
And so, I suppose that's really what flummoxed me. Um, Tools, well, when it comes to any creative venture or project that I'm interested in, um, I think the tools I use is first of all information gathering and um, thinking about things. It's usually maybe a subject that I'm interested in, or that I feel I'm not really comfortable with, but I could find out a little bit more about it. But then the next thing would be um, surrounding myself with sound, getting music to try to separate out my feelings about something, and from there, music will then excite me,
Yeah.
so that then I can feel it and visualize it and turn it into something dramatic, or choreographic. So, you know, I work in theater,
Yeah.
I work in dance, but I'm not I'm a dance theater person. So I, when I work with dancers, it's very often from uh, um, theatrical and dramatic aspect.
Right.
Uh,
And it was beautiful because here's what I would say. The tool you gravitate towards is creativity, research, info gathering, sound, and especially music. So I have to throw this one in. Do you know Twyla Tharp
oh yeah,
did I couldn't believe it. I think it's in the documentary. She was so aware pre becoming this preeminent, you know, every cool composer in the world would go, wow, I get Twyla Tharp to do a dance to my music. For like 5 years, she said, I'm dancing to no music. Did you know this about her? I was
yeah,
shocked.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
is amazing to go. I know my whole career is going to be so engulfed in sound and music that I'm going to do a period where I'm just in touch. So
yeah.
to me, that was amazing. Now, the same question, what toy do you gravitate towards?
Well, I had a teddy bear when I was little.
I have my teddy bear on my shelf still from when I was little. That's good. Okay, Maura, what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Um, oh, how long have we got? I've got a whole long list.
Just the top one, first one that comes to mind.
Um, there are, they all sort of merge really, Jerry, and they really come because I procrastinate terribly. Um, and so I procrastinate, and then so I can't get to sleep because I haven't done this and I haven't done this and I haven't done this. And very often it will be solved by 5 minutes of applying myself and then the task is done. Or it could be something that involves a lot of thinking and creativity. And then once I do it, I don't want to stop. And I think, why didn't I do this last week? Um, so, so a lot of it is just my own messed upness.
Messed upness. I would say you're doing fine. You look at your website alone. I judge people by their websites. Your
Ooh,
website is so cool. I was like, wow, this is good. Although I'll tell you right off the bat, on a couple of your media links,
yes.
they don't go to the article.
Oh no! Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible.
But
I'm,
it's not terrible. I mean, look, at most people, websites are totally obsolete. No one does websites anymore. But I like them. They're helpful in doing podcasts just to see how someone wants to approach the look. You
Okay,
know,
so now I'm going to be lying awake tonight thinking, I didn't fix the link. It would have taken 5 minutes. I didn't fix the link.
Okay. Marshall McLuhan learned from the poet Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race, dancers, musicians. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, Maura, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
I suppose because they're uncomfortable. Truths are usually uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Um, I think that thing about the artist, almost being like the beacon and the warning signs of what's coming, or the observers of society that everybody should take notice of. It's a bit tricky I always find it tricky when we talk about artists, because I know that a lot of people just say, oh, that's not for me, or who do they think
Yeah.
they are? And I think that there can be a perception of some kind of elitism that um,
Yeah.
artists are special, whereas I believe that we're all artistic, and I think that we're all potential artists. And I
That's
think,
so good. Yeah.
and I think that art is really important. When I see friends and colleagues who get really attached to the latest news broadcast or the latest
Yeah.
article. It can sound undermining or flippant to say, you need to switch off from that and go to a concert, or come with me to an art gallery, or let me send you this video of some really amazing dance theater. And we need to do these things. We need to do these things. We need to surround ourselves with art, with beautiful, that feeds our senses, because no artist can be artistic unless they're fed not only information from the outside world, but everything that's attendant on it, which isn't just politicians making statements or countries invading other countries. It really is from the very basics of who we are and human behavior and interaction, whether it's cooking something using these particular ingredients, or writing a poem and interpreting it or discussing it. Art is far more important than is generally perceived. So I teach the arts in schools, and as you can hear, I'm from the UK with Irish parents. In the UK, for year after year after year, the government would appoint all of these committees to set up reports and investigations into, how to provide better healthcare, better housing, better roads, all of that, and better education. And when they would get the results of what is the best education, it would always come back that, the school library has to be absolutely central to everything that the children do, and they need to be brought out to concerts, and they need to all be able to be given the permission and the ability to learn a musical instrument. And there should be dance, not just PE, there should be dance class, and there should be drawing and painting and sculpture. It doesn't matter how many times the experts advised them. This was the one thing that they would say, you know what, we're going to stick with our maths and science and English tests. We're going to stick with that. And they do the same here to a lesser extent, but they do the same here.
Yeah, no, it's really good because so much evoked. If you haven't watched it, just a couple days ago, YouTube has a 90-minute documentary that PBS made on libraries, the history of libraries in America. And I'm in tears the whole time. I go to a library every day. I mean, Susie and I freaked out. It is so intense what a library is, where it came from in America, the whole history. And I'm glad you brought that word up. And then saying we're all artists, that's Joseph Beuys, the great artist, said everybody's an artist. And then you brought into culinary artists, everyone's an artist. And then the elitist thing you said was really good, because in our group today, I brought up the statement, oh, I asked this person at the museum something political. She goes, I'm not a political person. And I said, that's a political statement. By saying you're not a political, in elitist, like Andy Warhol said, the most bourgeois thing is to diss the bourgeois. Dissing the bourgeois is the most bourgeois thing you can do. So here's you led perfectly into this. Do artists have moral obligation?
Well, if I were to say yes, well, who am I to say that they do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ideally, yes, but I'm certainly not going to dictate that.
Yeah. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Let me think about that. Well, both, neither. I don't think
both and neither. Yeah, there's no right or wrong answers, but that one you got right.
I don't really think of fearing ideas.
Yeah.
I fear people acting on certain ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
Oh, one of them, um, I suppose I was about 2, maybe 2 going on 3, probably 2, and I was in a little cot, which I think is called a crib here, um, in a bedroom, and I could hear grown-up voices in another room. So probably my parents, maybe my grandparents or aunts and uncles, and my older brother would have been in the other room. So I was in this room in my cot on my own, and I looked at the clock, and then I don't know whether I was walking around or crying or singing or entertaining myself. Maybe I had a toy, maybe the teddy was there, I don't know. But then the clock, when I looked again, it looked different. And then I realized that the long bit was moving, but I kept looking at it, but it didn't move. And then I would be bored, and then I'd look again, and it had moved again. So it was like it was a trick, and I just was fascinated but puzzled. So yeah, I don't know how old I was. Maybe I was between 1 and 3. That's all. I'm sure.
That-
I'm sure by 3,
yeah.
I would have climbed out and probably picked it up and tried to pull it to pieces. But
That's a great aphorism right there. Time is a trick.
yes, and a mystery.
Yeah. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
A blessing.
Yeah. Tell me someone within your immediate family who had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact?
Oh well, I suppose all members of my family had an impact. My huge impact. I just have to. I'll just choose one off the top of my head. I will say my mother, who passed away recently, and that's obviously a time when my family and I and my friends all reflected on who this remarkable person was, and her huge impact. I suppose she was modeling life, and I copied more than I cared to admit, because I obviously didn't follow many things that she did, but she was eclectic in her interests and fostered. She taught us all to read before we started school, so she was. So her influence was huge in that, you know, the value of words and reading was very important. She came from a very working class background and climbed out of it through education. Um, she did lots of things. She played different instruments. She taught singing. She taught dance. She was interested in history. She was bon vivant and a great, very hospitable, and loved parties. Loved fresh air. There's so many things that I suppose I emulated. Sadly, I'm not a musician. That even though I tried to not be her and not be like her, I'm very pleased to say that I followed in some of her footsteps, and I hope received some of the musical and dance gifts that she had.
You know, I saw the pictures of her on your Facebook page, and it was just beautiful. The aura I got just from still photos, you could tell, very special person. And when my female friends were turning 50 20 years ago, they were fretting becoming their mothers. And I kind of asked, well, why do women fret becoming their mothers? Men don't fret becoming their mothers or fathers. You know, but Oscar Wilde nailed it. He said,
I was about to say Oscar
yeah,
Wilde.
yeah, he goes, women fret becoming their mothers, men don't. That's their problem.
Yeah. So yeah, it ends with "that's theirs." So
Yeah.
what is yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
women dread or fear becoming
yeah,
their a void, or yeah, we'll have to get
yeah,
the exact quote, but yes,
yeah. It's
becoming their
amazing. So,
yeah.
but did your mom was your mom raised in Ireland?
Mainly in England, but
Oh,
during but
she was raised in.
yeah, with Irish parents, and moved to Ireland during the war
I
to,
see.
to escape some of the worst of the Blitz.
Yeah, I know because the podcast on YouTube with you really goes into your uh, depth. I recommend people listen to it to go into the depth of your background with your mom and your family. But the same question, Maura, I'm curious, outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact?
Um, when I was 8, my mother decided to send me to a non-Catholic school, not because she wants to escape Catholicism by any means. She was very religious and devout. It's just that the local Catholic school was terrible. And so I was sent to this non-Catholic school, which meant that I had to go to catechism classes with the nuns on Sunday, which was terrible. But I had this amazing teacher for 2 years, Mr. Johnson, in fact, quite funnily, which amused my parents, a Protestant from Belfast. And he was just the most amazing teacher you could ever want. Um, Having been at school for between ages of 4.5 up to 8, that was very rigid and strict and good in some ways. You know, we learned our multiplication tables and um, joined up handwriting, which I think is called cursive here. And by the time I went to this other school at the age of 8.5, oh my goodness, we were doing geography projects, history projects, science, poetry. We were allowed to write poems. And he just opened up the world to us. We were all taught how to play chess. Nobody was like, had the idea that this is just for brain boxes or this is only for some people who want to do it. So he just opened up my understanding of what learning could be, and it was just thrilling, absolutely thrilling. And there was the freedom in it, and I would be so energized by it. I'd come home and teach my younger siblings everything that I'd learned that day, every poem, every story.
That is so cool. It sounds like it's sort of rooted on how you became a great educator was from Mr. Johnson. But were you raised a Roman Catholic?
Yes.
Do you pray?
Oh, no, no. Well, actually, no, I'm not a Catholic anymore. In fact, most of our family just turned our back on Catholicism. Our parents didn't. My dad did a little bit, but they just accepted that we were growing up in London in the 60s and 70s, and we had our ears open. As did my parents. They were quite progressive. And so the Catholic religion wasn't for us at all. But I reject all organized religion, but I do love and accept spirituality. And although generally I don't pray, when a friend of mine tragically passed away in January, aged 50, when he was sick, I prayed. I suppose,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. I talked to whoever was listening, yeah, that he would recover.
Well, you're living in LA. One person said, "Do you pray?" She goes, "Yeah, for parking spaces." I thought you'd like that. If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Um, Welcome to the party. I don't know.
Welcome to the party. There's got to be free ice cream too. Okay. Do evil people exist or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think evil uses people as a vehicle. I don't believe that human beings are innately evil. I don't. I doubt that. baby Hitler was evil.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, the real hidden question here is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola said, he stole it from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
yes, I totally agree with that. I think that's true. I think, but we have to think on levels. So if we're just addressing a personal level, I think it is best just to try and take take all of the hot air out of the room and just kind of um, play things down and try not to acknowledge and try to not enter into the fight with them,
Yeah.
or the animosity. Best to try and neutralize that, because life's too short. But that, but I don't think that about the larger picture. For instance, the way the world is at the moment. I think that unfortunately there are enemies, and they are generally power hungry politicians, and the powers behind them. And I think that we ignore them at our peril. So I feel that it's important to stand up to enemies, to resist. We look at the famous example of Vladimir Zelensky, extremely courageous person, leading very courageous people. I think it's important that yeah, that we do have to face our enemies. Yeah, but not personally.
Yeah.
So sometimes when I see stuff on online, that AI has done, or somebody has photoshopped something, like I think somebody photoshopped gang tattoos on Trump's knuckles, and that
Yeah.
that's kind of funny. But I sort of think the personal stuff, that I think that distracts us from the more important thing that we have to do to
The
try
real
and
issue. Yeah.
the real issue. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good, because Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. And Gregory Bateson says, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, I did something morally and socially wrong? So again, it's a lot of prompts, but the basic question is, does punishment work? I'm glad you're laughing. Like, what do
um,
you,
yeah, I think punishment does work.
yeah,
Um, and that's a terrible thing for an educator to say, because I don't believe in punishing anybody that I'm teaching. Um, punish uh, punish sounds like bullying. I think that if I were to try to deal with a disruptive or dangerously bullying person in a class, I would find strategies to deal with them, um, which I don't think is punishment. People in the Middle East are starving. That's their punishment. They're being starved in Gaza. They're being starved. That's a horrible punishment. Um, I can think of we could give examples of how the Allies in the Second World War punished um, punished the Nazis and punished the Japanese, and it brought about eventual peace. You could say that peace was brokered in Northern Ireland by the punishment of IRA activities on the City of London and the heart of government in Downing Street. Doesn't mean that you endorse it, but you see it.
Yeah. Really good. So James Joyce was talk about Dublin. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. Volta Cinema. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?" Years later, Faulkner said, "Sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism." Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
I think that artists can bring different factors together to distill the information. And so if I read an historical novel, I really get the feeling of that time as the reader saw it. And very often, if you have for instance, a female historical novelist, that will maybe bring out things that weren't taught in history class, because in the old days, the historians were male. So there's an example of how the artist was able to see it from a different point of view. We read and we experience art. We experience what's really going on through the arts, I think, sometimes much more acutely than what Rupert Murdoch has decided we should hear.
Yeah. That's exactly what Faulkner was saying. Sometimes the best fiction is more true than the news. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. So, Maura, you really lay out what I ask in my next question on that podcast. It's like an hour long with your friend. So I really recommend people listen to that. That's really good. And basically I asked, where's the tipping point where you decided dance would be your calling? But then it's like, where's the tipping point where theater would be your calling? Acting, storytelling, choreography, writing. But I'm going to go to this one because I'll refer people to that one for your main thing, being a theatrical dancer. Where was the tipping point for you to pursue screenwriting? Where, you're going along and you're writing, you're dancing, you're in theater, but where's this point where you go, I'm going to try writing a film? And your film is a feature film, right?
I hope so one day. It's
So tell us the tipping point where that happened.
Okay, so the tipping point is, I should first of all say, because I know that my sister will watch this, my sister Angela, who is a writer, director, and screenwriter herself, she suggested that we had produced many dance comedy plays over the years together in the 1980s. And she suggested that we both attend a screenwriting class. So I went, and it wasn't for me at all, because I just didn't want to read out my ideas and have people that I didn't value critiquing me. Obviously, my ego was so fragile that I couldn't stand it. And Angela just obviously thought that you just need to get over yourself, and she pursued it, and she became a screenwriter. She just followed it. I thought, oh yeah, I don't really think that's for me. That was many years ago. Anyway, as I've gone through different permutations of being a dancer choreographer in the United States, I choreographed it. My market was different, and so I was working with a lot of Irish dance schools in dance theatre in a way I hadn't really been doing in England. And so anyway, things opened up, and it gave me a real insight into the way Irish dance schools operated, but also the way competitions operated, because instead of judging 2 or 3 competitions a year, which I did in England, I was judging 2 or 3 competitions a month here. And so I saw and heard everything. I know where all the bodies are buried. And so I saw that there was a huge amount of cheating and general corruption, bullying, coercion. And I could also see how it could happen. It happened to some of the nicest, sweetest people who themselves fell foul to this. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I just love Irish dancing so much. I think it's just a great dance technique. It's a great performance art with so much potential to it still. But I hated all of the other stuff. And I thought, I've got to tell this story. People are not telling this story. People just know about river dance or Lord of the Dance, but they don't know about this other stuff. I allude to it when I wrote a one-woman show and toured it, and I alluded to it. I didn't go into it heavily. And in fact, in my screenwriting, I don't go into the really, really, really worst stuff that goes on, which includes child abuse, as you might guess. But I really wanted to tell the story, and I thought, I was terrified that, you know what, somebody that I don't value is going to write the screenplay, and that's going to be the Irish dance movie. I've got to get there first. So
Wow.
I did have a little bit of feeling that I've just got to do it. And as I was experiencing and witnessing more and more bad behavior in the world that I belonged to, that I was a teacher and a adjudicator, a judge with, I could see the great potential, because it's a universal story. This isn't like some little narrow cult that I need to tell about, although it is. It's got universal truths that I think that would make for wonderful storytelling and drama. And it would also embody my experience of living both sides of the Atlantic, of being a London Irish, where I'm brought up in England with Irish parents and Irish family and doing Irish dance. My mother was an Irish dance teacher. And so I wanted to bring my experiences to bear, and also to understand, I suppose that was the thing. I just wanted to understand, well, how could sweet and nice and good people fall prey to this and get carried along with it and be coerced and bullied and cornered into joining this competition fixing, cheating cult that was also on the other side a beautiful cultural legacy.
That is so good. Where was the class you took? Was that in London or in England, in LA?
Oh, the screenwriting class. Oh, well, I think I only went twice. That was in London.
In London. Yeah.
Yeah. So then when I actually got to the point where I just thought, okay, I'm just going to have to write this, I spoke to a friend who teaches screenwriting in Ireland, and we would Skype. Goodbye Skype. I think it's just disappeared, but we would have Skype sessions. And the first time she read my first draft, she said, "Oh, this is really interesting, and wow, I love all the characters." And of course, I was feeling great. And she said, "It's not really a screenplay. I think maybe this is really a novel in the making." And she just said, "Yeah, that's not a screenplay." So she sort of taught me how to write a screenplay, and I had followed many. I'd read up on how to write. I think if I had known how hard it was going to be, I wouldn't have done it. So I'm glad that I didn't know how hard it was going to be. It took me because I wouldn't have done it. It took me 6 years, and here's
oh my God, that's beautiful. 6 years.
6 years, and in the 6 years, which of course was on and off, sometimes months at a time, writing, and then a couple of months of nothing, and I don't want to talk about it. So on the very time when I finished it, which was October 2022, I think it was 5 days later, there was a big news story in the media in Ireland. It had all come to light that there was this big revelation of competitive Irish dancing was awash with cheats. So the actual story that I'd just written about was suddenly headline news. And in fact, it was on Fox News, it was on CNN. There's a little kind of funny aside. It was in the British media. I thought, great, my timing is perfect. And I was joking to friends, well, in Irish dancing, timing is everything. Well, not so far, but I'm still trusting.
Well, the peddling thing is the one thing. I mean, I know we go in that for hours. I know people who've written screenplays for 20 years and never got one film produced. And so, whatever. It's a beautiful thing that you expanded your many talents But one thing you brought up, what I love is Balzac said, behind every fortune, there's a crime. And it's like behind every award, there's something. That's an amazing thing you tackled, because really you boiled it down to 3 words: to tell us, or 4 words: to tell a story. That's what you wanted to tell a story. You've told them these other ways. So that was really good. So a screenwriting teacher of all things, what a follow-up. You have ESP. A screenwriting teacher told me that a great film is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Stanley Kubrick says the opposite. Great film is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. Now, not so much in the screenplay. We're going to switch back to Irish dance, because really that's your main thing. Irish dance, let's say. Irish theater dance, one of your main things. When you're making up a dance, a Mora dance, not so much a commission, you're just making up a dance because you're making art. What role does intention play in your creative process?
Oh, a major one, I think probably it starts everything. It might be ditched halfway through, or it probably will change.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I think throw everything into the pot. Have an idea of what I mean to convey and what I want to investigate. Um, but as with I think most artistic pursuits, you start with one idea and then maybe it side tracks over to something else, or it takes you in a slightly different direction. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think intention is the beginning for me.
Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your viewer, the person who's going to watch your dance when you're creating your dance?
I think that comes later. I think that comes later. I think that if we're worried about people watching and what they're going to think and what their reaction is, then it's going to be just a series of compromises.
Yeah. You've used the pencil. Let's say what's your main tool as a dancer is your body, but this is based on McLuhan saying everything we invent extends some humanness. Like a knife and fork extends our teeth. Shutter in a camera or projector extends our eyelid. And even non-tangibles, say religion or philosophy, extends consciousness. What does the writing utensil extend for you? Because you are a writer, writing theater. You had to write your plays with your sister. You wrote your screenplay. The writing utensil, that's a pen or a keyboard. What humanness does it extend?
Mm, I don't know. Let me think. I don't know, except to say that physically, if I'm not present in a physical way when I'm creating, then I don't really feel that much will come of it, or I'll run out of ideas. I know that if I'm writing something and I stall, or I get jumbled up or irritated with what's happening or not happening, I will go for a walk. So that is my moving through and feeling, the senses of being among nature, and or just stomping out my frustration through my feet. I um, um, yeah, I mean, I say that, but I
No,
know
I
that
would say,
some of my ideas have come. I think some of my ideas have come when I'm sitting very still on a plane,
yeah.
and I'm slightly oxygen deprived, and I can't answer the phone or have any distractions, and sometimes that is when the thoughts flow. But maybe that's because I'm in a state of slight relaxation.
No, it's amazing what you're saying, because that's, I take bike rides 3 times a day, and that's just the turning of the wheels makes
Yes.
and you're like, especially in the morning, there's no sounds. It's like amazing. But I think what you're saying is it extends your physicalness or yeah, that's what your entire body.
Yes.
Because that's what dance is. Dance is basically so here's the thing, like when they asked McLuhan, what does film extend? Most people say, well, your eye or memory. He said, no, it extends your foot because you're traveling. So, and then this guy the other day, who's a great trumpet player, played with everybody. I says, what does the trumpet extend? What humanness? And he said, the primal scream.
Oh,
And I was
yeah.
like, holy moly. Or the poet in Italy said, what does the pen extend? He says, my tears.
I love that. It's
but
so
but
funny,
it is.
weird about music, because I remember years ago saying to my mom, I think I like the flute more than any other instrument because it sounds like the human voice. And she said, does it? Is that what it sounds like to you?
Yeah.
And I have heard other people say that about different instruments.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's
yeah,
that's the evident one. I mean, it's evident when I say, what does this extend? In the evident ones are, well, if it's visual, it's the eye. If it's audio, it's the ear. But even in this PBS doc on libraries, which I can't stop recommending, this woman said down south, their mother was Black and she was teaching them how to read, and she wrote with her finger in the dirt. And I mean, that's what the pen extends, is your finger, because we could write in the sand, but we're like, I can't carry a sandbox around. Could you invent paper and pour it, in something besides my finger?
yeah. Well, isn't that what Dennis Potter, the English writer, used to say that, and this was when, he died some years ago, but somebody interviewed him and asked him about, do you use your word processor for writing? And he said, oh, absolutely not. No, it's the pen. It's the pen. It's my hand and feeling the nib on the paper and feeling the scratch across the page. And he said, it's a physical thing. And the way he said it, it was just,
Oh,
it really was like the extension of his hand, of his finger.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, McLuhan got it from Walt Whitman, that everything we invent extends some humanness. But Dennis Potter, what he writes, Something Detective,
The singing detective.
oh my God, my friend turned me on to that. That is some of the best stuff. I got to get that. Singing Detective.
Yeah.
That's really good. Thanks for reminding me of that. So let's go into dance a little. This is Ruth Draper. The key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. Hey, that sounds good, but how do you do that? I mean, how do you do that as a dancer? You're on the stage. How do you do that as an actor and a theatrical performer? How do you bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you?
I suppose by exposing your own vulnerability. So, which is hard if you're acting because you're pretending to be somebody else. But if you manage, I think, to inhabit whoever you're portraying deeply enough, that will also bring to bear some of your own personality. And I think that when you do reveal and expose your true self and your vulnerability, which is a risky thing to do in live theatre, people really recognize it and feel it, and we all experience a connection. And so, yeah.
How do you, that's amazing. You really articulated that well, concisely, and you got ESP because that's the next question. Leonard Cohen says the only way you can sell a concert is if you put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know.
They
what
do.
What role does risk play in your creative process?
Well, without risk, there's no life. I mean, risk. You think of everything that's good in your life. It took risk to get it, or to be it, or to experience it. Risk is part of the deal,
But who
isn't it?
did you learn that the way your parents raised you or on your own?
Oh, I think that they would. I think they would want us all to be risk averse. Isn't that what parents do? They want us to be safe. Um, I don't know. I think I had quite an independent streak, and so if I found that I was in a situation where there was risk, there was the thrill of that. So yeah, I know when I first moved over here some 21 years ago, it felt like a very risky, probably foolhardy thing to do. And it was full of risk and the unknown. And but I think it really it worked well for me, because I had to try new things and do move outside my comfort zone, literally. 5,500 miles from where I was comfortable. So I think that risk is something that we all should give a try to. And I know that as I'm getting older, I tend to sometimes opt for something that's comfortable, but then like many of us, I get a bit bored. And so risk and variety and not routine are where the goodies are.
What does courage mean to you now?
Well, courage is a funny thing, because sometimes it can mean something on the spur of the moment when you see somebody saving somebody's life and it took a lot of courage for them to do it. But generally, I think that courage, or as I've tried to find it within myself, is a bit ongoing. It's kind of staying the distance and trusting that if you keep holding on and you keep, telling yourself that things will get better, or that you have to work through maybe a bereavement, that with courage you'll get there. I don't know. I'm probably not really somebody to ask about courage. I feel that I'm probably a little bit of a fraud if I talk about courage.
I think the last thing you are is a fraud. You've laid your cards on the table. You're so honest. That's what I love about you. So, or you're articulate. So this is back to that. I spoke with this famous rock star, and I said, the Leonard Cohen, what role does risk play in your creative process? Most people say what you said. He said, I leave risk in the dressing room. And I'm like, wow, well, that's like, you want to appear to be confident when you're on stage. You don't want, it's almost like my favorite line ever is Buster Keaton knew how to turn a stumble into a dance. Or I know the other one is Bob Fosse, one of the greatest choreographers ever.
Yep.
Sammy Wasson wrote a book about him, and he said Fosse's dancers acted like they were dancing. They weren't dancing, they were acting like they were dancing. So it's sort of like, oh yeah. So that's that thing about having confidence. So this question.
Also with Fosse is that he turned all of his bad points for good. So he was self-conscious about losing his hair, and so he always wore a hat. He didn't have good turnout. He didn't have natural turnout. Ballet was a struggle for him. He made the inverted, the pigeon-toed, such a major part of his style of jazz dance. That those are two examples.
No, that's really good. I love when I throw out a name and then the person I'm interviewing teaches me more than I know about that person. That's really what I'm after. I'm out to learn. I'm just a student here, because that's the main thing McLuhan learned from Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, is how do you turn a breakdown into a breakthrough? How do you turn a weakness into a strength? You flip it.
Yeah.
And that's what you were telling me, exact examples of how Fosse did that, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so this is Viola Spolin. You know, this woman, she did role playing exercises in Chicago as a social worker and basically spawned comedy improv. So all, you know, the Groundlings, Saturday Night Live, all came out of Viola Spolin. And here's her quote: "If the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it." What role does struggle play in your creative process?
Well, so there's the creative process, and then there's the presenting it on stage. Um, struggle is one of those pejorative terms. It makes it feel like, oh, it's the struggle. It's a difficult thing, but struggle, of course, in the creative process is not only necessary. Well, it is necessary, but it's also it can be fun. It's if you really, you wouldn't be suicidal if you couldn't finish a crossword, but you might be a little frustrated. And I think it's the same with the creative process. I mean, I went through many struggles writing that screenplay, where I just thought, oh, this isn't working, and this scene doesn't ring true, and oh, I shouldn't have done that, and but that's good. I needed to go through all of that to bring it to where I got it.
Yeah, that's really good. So I wanted to talk to you about time for a second. This is a question I usually ask musicians, but I know how important we brought. What was your quote earlier on? Time is something. It was great. I wrote it down here somewhere. But in dance, I mean, time is, especially Irish dance, when you say time is an important element. So I'm going to ask you this question, and then you can put in the context of dance. Why is 4/4 time the most commonly used time signature in Western music?
Because it reflects the heartbeat, or it reflects when we're walking and we walk and we sing along to ourselves or hum, and so and maybe it's where we're jiggled as a baby and it's 1, 2, 3. It's nice and regular. It's kind of easy. Da, da, da. It's sort of predictable and safe and happy. And maybe it's not. I'm not a musician, but being a choreographer, I'm aware of rhythm and timing, obviously, in music. I think that's what that is, which is why when we mess with time signatures, it's exciting. And when musicians change the tempo or they change the rhythm during a song, that gives it a bit of a whoomph, and then people laugh or they join in the chorus, or there's it's as in all art, there's a bit of a surprise or there's a bit of a woohoo, a change, a swerve, that it keeps us all on our toes.
Keeps us on our toes. That's what we need to do, because it's a new question. I've been interviewing people for 40 years, and this one's just new in the last 6 months. And guess this is what I got. Well, you almost like read my script perfectly. Besides being intuitive and easy, it might be because it's in sync with our heartbeat rhythm and in sync with walking and marching. Now, that doesn't mean it's the right answer, but it's amazing because this one musician said, what, 4/4 time? He says, because we have 2 hands and 2 feet. 4/4. And then some people dispute it and says our heartbeat rhythm is not 4/4. It's either 5/8 or 3/4 or 6/8. I mean, I don't know. Do you think our heartbeat is in 4/4?
Well, if you were to say, why does everybody opt for 6/8? I'd say, well, yes, because 6/8 is a jig, which is a march. Goes with our heartbeat, goes with our walking. So, that answer is true too. Maybe, I don't know. blame
That's
the
good.
mandolin or the quaver or the crotchet. I don't know.
What 6/8 is the jig. That's amazing. I'm glad you told me that because I love. We didn't mention the title of your screenplay is "The Jig Is Up."
Yes.
But that's a double entendre right there. I tried to understand that right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The jig is up. What a title. But I'm going to read you Captain Beefheart on this 4/4 time and just see if you have any thoughts. Captain Beefheart liked to vary from what he called the mama heartbeat. He said that beat, that old 4/4 rhythm, is related to fascism. It's so fixative, so hypnotic, so synthesized that it's dangerous to the heart. It's faster than the heart. Disco is dangerous. He wanted to create non hypnotic music to break up that catatonic state.
Well, I love that. I don't think you could say it's faster because we're not talking tempo, but I do like the idea of breaking up the catatonic state.
Right.
Hypnotic, it might mean that therefore we'll all become automatons or whatever, but it can also soothe us.
Yeah.
And so I find if I'm listening to, um, you know, some Buddhists playing some kettle drums. I find that very soothing, or listening to a Philip Glass repetitive sound. Again, it's calming.
Yeah.
Or yeah, it's calming, which can help you sleep, but it's calming so it can also energize you because you've
Yeah.
been calmed. But yeah, music is like food and drugs and colors. It can lead us to all kinds of behaviors and
Yeah.
feelings.
It's really good.
Uh,
That's what Bertolt Brecht said. I don't want art that puts me in a trance. I want art that activates me. But art that puts you in a trance might eventually lead to you being activated.
Well, that's true, and I'll bring this to an Irish music and dance example. Irish dancing has been around forever, but when Riverdance came out, they weren't dancing to the usual 4/4 and 6/8 time signatures. They were dancing to Bill Whelan's composition, which varied and was in 7/8 time, which was an Eastern European influence. Bill Whelan, the most fantastic composer, and and deserves all the plaudits he gets. Also, he was a colleague of Andy Irvine, this genius composer, Irish composer musician, who took the time to go and live in Eastern Europe, I think in the 70s, and researched this music, this Eastern European, the time signatures, the Bulgarian music. I don't want to say more than that because I might not get it exactly right. 5/4, 7/8, and that's what made Riverdance hypnotic. That you couldn't really predict it. It sounded slightly off, but off sounds sour or stale. It was more on. It was more, if off is one direction, and I don't know, maybe it's, if there's on and there's off, then maybe it was off in that direction. That it kind of
Wow.
shook you up. It caught the attention, and so Riverdance, which became this phenomenal Irish dance show and sort of made what we were doing globally popular and recognized, came about because somebody had fiddled with, they had messed with that tradition of Irish music down the centuries and said, let's put a little bit of an Eastern European jive to it.
But the normal river dance consumer didn't know that. They thought they were getting pure Irish.
Yeah, and it's an Irish dance show that actually experimented with unusual rhythms that would not typically be danced among traditional Irish dancers, even very advanced Irish dancers.
Is
Nowadays,
that
it's all opened up, and
right?
and
But
yeah,
is that known? What you just taught me, is that known or is that sort of hidden info?
it was certainly discussed at the time. I don't know how broadly it's known.
Right.
I know that it really excited me. My Irish Dance Theatre Company in the late, so about 4 or 5 years after Riverdance. I got some funding from the Arts Council, I think it was, in England. And we brought in Stefan Hannigan, an Irish musician, to come in and teach us 5/4 and 7/8 because we were so excited by it. And oh yeah, so he was teaching us all of these clapping games. And here was us advanced, very rhythmical, very tuned in, advanced Irish dancers going, what? Do that again. Yeah, but it was so much fun, and it was really invigorating, and we created our own 5/4 and 7/8 choreographies from it.
That's funny because the Bulgarian women's choir just revolutionized things when they charted on the English pop charts, and then Maura Smiley and all these people were singing Bulgarian women's choir, and that was amazing. But it's also you really evoked this one thing I learned about Astor Piazzolla. He took the tango, the Argentinian way of playing music, and changed it, and they would beat him up literally on the street and then years later he's acknowledged as one of the great composers of all time, and they're putting his picture on coffee mugs to the tourists and they go, oh no, we love Astor Piazzolla, we don't beat him up anymore. So it's like,
what did he do? How did he change it?
I don't know. All I know is that he did something, but it's sort of like what you're saying the Riverdance composer did. He did a little change, but most people think they're hearing the tango in its traditional way because it's so close. It's like anybody, the guys who changed rock and roll, like Frank Zappa, or the guys like Sun Ra changing jazz. These people, it sounds kind of normal, but to the real listener, they'll go, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Well, this is again how the human invention shapes our behavior. I spoke with Michael Apted 40 years ago. He did a lot of great films, Coal Miner's Daughter, 28 and Up. And I said, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? And most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but it flourished in the 80s because of MTV, to the point where Marty Scorsese said, oh, I cut my films faster because of MTV. So Michael Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. So I asked this question with a bias. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
I don't know. You see, if we can take it in faster, doesn't mean that we're taking it in as deeply. So if a young person can have multiple screens up and can have a full conversation with you while they're busy texting and uploading their Twitter feed or their Instagram, they're able to do things fast, but fast isn't necessarily right. I think sometimes I've certainly found that even though I can be impatient and want to do things fast, sometimes taking things slowly or hesitating or going back over things. I was sending an email the other day and I was thinking, what's that piece of piece of advice? Never send an important email after writing it. Leave it overnight, cogitate, read it the next day. And I thought, no. But I did. And the next day I thought, oh my goodness, I've rethought the way this needs to be expressed. And I'm so glad I did. So fast isn't necessarily good. Maybe it means that you can be, in more places than one, that, I'm updating my Facebook as I'm talking to you, Jerry.
That is great. I had a woman do that once. I said, really? Is it literally possible no, the next question. Let me ask you the next question. Is it literally possible to multitask?
Yeah.
So I asked this woman, and she goes, "Yeah, I've been checking my email as I've been doing this with you." I was like, "Oh my God, I could tell." I mean, you pulled the wool over my eyes because you are, it seems you've been present 100% here for our time together because, you know, George Lakoff, linguist, says we're operating 80% sub or unconsciously. I felt that both of us have been here pretty much 100% consciously. You know,
I hope so. I think so. I think
yeah,
so. I think I was afraid to be distracted with anything else, you know, so that I would miss something or misinterpret or not hear the question properly, and you know, be able to process it and answer it as best I could. But there is something else that Irish dancers typically do, and I have to somehow sometimes keep my fingers out of the way, is because as we're talking, we can be dancing steps with our fingers. And so I've had people say, "You're not listening. You're doing, what are you doing?" And I'll say, "I was just doing a hornpipe step. It's no big deal. I know everything you've just said." And they say, "But even the fact that you knew it was a hornpipe step." And I said, "Well, yeah, it's a particular way of moving your, you know, it's a step. It's an actual, but how do you know that you were doing it?" "Well, I barely knew that I was doing it." "Then how did you know it was a hornpipe step?" "Well, I don't know, but I, on some level, I knew that I was doing a particular." I don't know. How do you? You're breathing as you're listening to me, Jerry. Are you? Are
exactly.
you?
That's people usually say, like a lot of people, I go, "Is it literally possible to multitask?" They go, "No." The specialists say no, but we all are breathing and talking, and yeah, we're all multitasking. It just depends on how you define what multitasking is, because they usually go, yeah, mothers hold the baby, talk on the phone, you know, fix the food. That mother, you know, I mean,
Yes.
women are really good at multitasking. But again, there's these are just prompts. It's not like I know what I'm talking about. That's why I ask people questions. But I think what you were talking about with the fingers is called muscle memory. That
Yes. Yes.
it's
Yes.
partly that you can unconsciously do this, and you're actually reinforcing your muscle memory, but at the same time you're having a discussion. Because I
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
My mother had lost a big part of her brain through Alzheimer's, and yet up until probably a year before she died, she was still able to play tunes that she had known for
yeah,
80 years, and she was still able to really make it still sound like that piece of music. Um, yeah, and you know,
yeah,
she might not have been able to form much of a sentence or remember anybody's name particularly well. She might not have known what piece of music she was playing, but she could
yeah.
absolutely play it. Yeah, yeah,
That says something about music, because we've known several Alzheimer's dementia folks who they retain this. Susie sang this song at a Alzheimer's. It's a really rare girl with the girl with the three blue eyes. It's a rare comedy song from years ago. And all of a sudden, one of the guys in the audience started singing it.
really,
And
yeah.
she went to that Alzheimer's center to sing, and the first time she did, she came home crying
Uh,
because they couldn't give her the feedback she'd gotten addicted to for 30, 40 years of singing, that they were like looking off. Eventually, she learned how to read them, and it became one of her favorite gigs because they were so into it. But it is hard to read how they respond to you, you know. And it's like, hey, I'm your kid. Don't you remember my name?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's just it's a, you know, music is a beautiful thing for my mother because music was absolutely central to her life. I think that it was such a blessing that she still had that. So as her brain was fast
Totally.
fading, she still had this amazing ability to recognize and feel music. And even though she couldn't play towards the end, she really appreciated it. You would see her very moved by different pieces of music, and she became animated. And if we can all still be that connected, that far on, then that's a great thing.
Yeah. I asked for 90 minutes. It's already 90 minutes, and I hope you'll do a part two somewhere down the line. It could be 5-6 months down the line, or even a year, because there's so much more I want to get into with you. So, especially that just what you were saying is when I brought up Twyla Tharp doing dance for a few years with no music.
Yeah.
And I know Rudy Perez, one of the great choreographers in LA. He did a piece of he did a dance piece once where he came out on stage, he lit a cigarette and sat on a stool, and that was the dance piece. So, it was very Duchampian, but he was a great dancer, in New York and all this stuff. But it was amazing how far what dance can do, because the ending with music is Walter Pater said, all art aspires to the condition of music.
Yes.
And it's like painting, architecture, poetry wishes it can be as cool as music. But you're in a world that's dance, and really all art aspires to the condition of dance, maybe, because what is it, or theater, what is
I don't think we can rate them. I think
right.
they're not hierarchical. They, in fact,
Right.
usually they only work when they mesh.
That's it. That's really good. So why don't we close this part up with what was the motive of the cave artists? Now we have your guess or your hunch. We have documents of them in these caves, but we don't have documents per se of cave dance or cave music. Now, we know that they could have been dancing before they were drawing on the caves. But in general, I'm asking, what is your guess was the motive of the cave artists, cave musicians, and cave dancers? What was their motive?
Who knows? Maybe they were on their own, and that was they like being in a jail cell, and you write your name, you scratch your name into the brick. Or maybe it was a celebration of life. I don't know.
Yeah,
I haven't really thought too much about that. I suppose because it doesn't really it doesn't intrigue me, because I suppose I just accept that since time immemorial, the human beings are expressive and articulate and creative, and however that comes out, it will come out. And that it's just that particular avenue meant that it was we still have evidence of it, but we don't hear the songs or dance the dances of that time, or those times.
Yeah. Maire, it's amazing, because really I don't do the follow-up, but the follow-up is the motive any different now? And it's like one person says, what was the motive of the cave artist? And they said, to keep people in the cave. Like, come over to my cave. I always say it was a good chance to serve grapes and cheese and crackers. Come over and see my cave drawings. But I love what you're saying, it was like a jail cell, because that's like Kilgore was here. It was like saying they were there. Sunra says everybody's in jail, but my jail's the best jail.
Love it. It's been such a great conversation, Jerry, and you have made me think, and I need to think a little bit more and more often. So thank you very much. It's such a, it's very, very provocative. So thank you.
Maire, I really hope we can plan a part 2 down the road. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we keep talking forever and ever. Thank you so much. It's really been fun and enlightening.
Thank you, Jerry.
All right. Bye.
Bye.